Best Friends Animal Society has a stated goal of a no-kill nation by the year 2025, which is great. Who could possibly argue with that? But a growing number of no-kill advocates at the local level are expressing concern about the impact it's having on local advocates' efforts to reform local animal control centers before 2025. Coming up, I'll be talking with some no-kill advocate experts from across the country. Stick with me. You're not going to want to miss this conversation. Hi, we're back, and I'm being joined by David Smith and Alan Rosenberg. David Smith is the president of No Kill Colorado, and his advocacy is largely why Colorado is one of the safest places in the United States for homeless pets. Alan Rosenberg is also known as the New Jersey Animal Observer, and he blogs and writes and is well known for his ability to research and analyze animal shelter records. Quite the data analyst. So welcome, David and Alan. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Mike.
Thanks for having me.
So, Best Friends' goal of a no-kill nation by the year 2025. I mean, we can all agree that that's a great goal, right, David?
Absolutely. I mean, when you look at what they have on their site and their marketing, their language, the lexicon they use, and the goal that they're trying to get to, sounds great.
And what's your thoughts about that, Alan?
I mean, I think in general it's a great aspirational goal. I think the devil's always in the details, but I think no one can argue with creating a no-kill nation. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, obviously we want no-kill. We are all advocating for it. We've put years of work into that. So since we can all agree with that, what in a nutshell do you think the concerns are that advocates are expressing about this program? How about Alan? Let's go to Alan first.
I would say, in general, we all know the history of these long-range no-kill goals by groups like Best Friends and Maddie's. Typically, it's generally been in one city, and frequently those goals either completely fail or fall short of the goal, and then the goal is pushed back several years into the future, and people basically who want to do substantial reform are relegated to the sidelines because there's this official no-kill program that's going forward that really isn't succeeding. So I think the risk, in my view, is that the no-kill 2025 effort may, at least in certain communities, delay no-kill by giving people a sense of comfort that, oh, it's all being taken care of, when really it's not going to be, at least for a number of years, when it really could happen immediately or in a year or so.
Do you agree with that, David? And anything else to add to that piece?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, and this is from both personal experience, and we all have seen this happen across the nation. When we look at putting in these long-term lofty goals, we open the gate to not doing anything today. Recently, No Kill Colorado was heavily involved in passing a law in Pueblo, Colorado. The first thing that the opposition tried to do, once they found out that we really had the headway and the community support to put in no-kill legislation, was, let's do a resolution. And that's a little bit like the 2025 goal to me in some senses, in that when you put in a resolution, it has absolutely no enforcement capabilities. You can't actually, you don't have the timely kind of urgency that you would have when we pass legislation. We had to do it now. We had dates where we actually had to meet goals. So I think the 2025 just gives too much runway to say, oh, we'll get around to that next year. or we'll get, we can get that, we'll do this year, and then next year we'll do this. And in the meantime, lives are in jeopardy.
Well, and isn't it true that there's a huge difference between setting a goal of 2025 at the national level versus encouraging local communities to adopt that same goal at the local level? Alan, what do you have to say about that?
I would say absolutely. I think if I were best friends, I would immediately clarify why it should be 2025. Does 2025 mean every community just needs to wait to 2025? Or does it mean that whatever, the effort they're doing is resulting in, say, them focusing on some communities for the first 3 years, other communities on the second 3 years, and another group of communities in the final 4 years. But I think they need to make clear that at an individual level, once a no-kill effort starts, it should happen immediately. There shouldn't be delays. It shouldn't wait to 2025, because this is not like some esoteric project on paper. There's actually lives on the line. So the longer we wait, thousands of animals will die or be killed needlessly, when they could be saved if the programs are put into place that we all know of to save lives. So I would say that best friends at this point should make it very clear that 2025 is really the deadline for the last group of communities, and most communities should be no-kill well before 2025.
Well, because we all know at the local level, no-kill can happen like overnight. I mean, like I've described Lake County as like flipping on a switch. And David, you just recently had that experience in Pueblo. Can you talk a little about that? How literally it can happen once the commitment's there overnight?
Yeah, we've been fortunate enough to be involved in two projects that actually did that. Canyon City in 2014. When we went into that community, they were killing about half of all the animals that came, half all the cats that came in the shelter, about a third of the dogs. When we finally got no-kill leadership into that shelter, it literally happened overnight. He walked in that day, Doug Ray, and the next month, they had a 94% save rate, and they've been over 95% annually for 4 years. In Pueblo, now we only have 2 months of data, but the 2 months are excellent. In 2 months, they have euthanized about, I think it was 5 animals in January and about the same in February. That was happening per day, December 31st. Just last year. And so the change was literally, they took control of the shelter at midnight on New Year's Eve and changed it overnight. We're looking forward to the entire year statistics. That's only 2 months. I'd be the first one to say we have to keep an eye on it and make sure we help them actually achieve that goal. But we've seen that this can happen immediately in any community that actually wants this. Well, every community, I think, wants this, but as long as the shelter management and leadership want this, it can happen overnight. So when we look at, the 2025 goal is a good goal for the nation, because there are some shelters that I guess we have to get to or find. There's shelter directors out there that still don't know that this is possible immediately. But we know that community by community, we can do this overnight.
Well, and my concern is that if Best Friends doesn't, clarify that messaging that their goal is a no-kill nation by 2025, but that means in order to achieve that, individual local communities have to set, right now immediate goals to make the transition. Then it means that 2025 goal will never happen. Thoughts about that, Alan?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, to get to no-kill, you have to be focused on the programs to get in place. And if there are some communities out there where the gaps between high-kill and no-kill are programming, typically that can happen pretty quickly, because you can get someone with knowledge to basically transfer that knowledge to the people that want to make the shelter no-kill, and it can happen relatively quickly. However, the bigger problem is, and I think this is the problem in most communities, is the problem isn't usually just a lack of programming, it's also a high kill culture at the shelter. And the shelter in those communities, the leadership of those shelters, is not willing to even listen, let alone implement the no-kill equation programs that will change the shelter from high kill to no kill. So when they talk about a no kill 2025, it seems to me that they're only going to be able to do that in communities where the leadership is already on board with no kill, because if it requires a reform effort, in many communities that reform effort can take a pretty long period of time. So I guess I'm a little confused on how they're going to achieve no kill by 2025 in every community, because it seems to me it's not possible. And in terms of doing it without reforming the shelters, and that's my main concern, is how are they going to get there? Are they just going to get there by saying, well, this large geographic area made it to 90% under the Asilomar Accord, which is not really 90%, it's somewhere south of 90%, or are they, or is there something else that I'm not realizing at this moment? But it seems to me that to get to no kill without reforming the places that need reform is going to be impossible. I don't know if you have thoughts on that, David or Mike.
Yeah, David, what do you think?
Well, yeah, I think something that Alan said made me think. I'm trying to think exactly what it was he had said. But at the local level, when we can make these changes so rapidly, when we look at, the nation as a whole, it just doesn't have the same measurable goals that we really need to actually get something done. When you look at the environment here in Colorado is very interesting, because we are known as a very good state for homeless pets. We hover in the high 80s statewide for a save rate, which is very good, but we still know that thousands of animals are being killed in our shelter system every year, and we have to change that. So when you look at that and the advocacy that we do here, it could be confrontational, and I think this is where Best Friends tends to not move as quickly or as forcefully as they could. I have been, or No Kill Colorado has been labeled, confrontational sometimes. I wouldn't actually deny that. It depends on how you look at it. But sometimes you have to push really hard. The word collaboration is used a lot by opposition from No Kill to say, well, if you just work with us, we'll get to it. But they don't want those measurable goals. They're like, yeah, we're going to improve. Well, I don't know what that means. And in order to get there by 2025, sometimes we're going to have to be aggressive. And sometimes, that's not viewed upon by the traditional sheltering world as something that they want to participate in. But if you don't do it, they don't participate at all. And I think that's part of the 2025 goal that I think is a problem. It's the strategy that is being used to get there is mostly trying to find shelters that are willing to work towards this. And I think we have to worry about both those and the ones that are actually resisting, and that we have to find a way to get them to move forward to progressive sheltering.
Yeah, and there's one specific example of how this actually, the 2025 goal at the local level could derail action, postpone immediate action now till later, because I feel like, people resist change. Change is always hard. People don't like to do it. Government bodies like to do it even less than individual people do. And if you give anybody an excuse to put off any real reforms, they'll take it for sure. A specific example comes to mind, and that is Baytown, Texas, where a city council member by the name of Robert Hoskins sort of took up the mantle of no-kill and decided he was going to try to push the local city council to reform their animal shelter there and move towards no-kill. Unfortunately, a no-kill advocate in Baytown attended a Best Friends conference where they were announcing the 2025 goal, and this city council member apparently connected up with this advocate who had been to that conference, and as a result, rather than pushing for more immediate changes, the council person decided that they were going to seek a non-binding resolution from the city council to achieve no-kill by 2025 in Baytown, Texas. And of course, that all that really did is put off and delay any sort of immediate action. When I heard that they had were working on that resolution, I sent an email out to the City Council of Baytown, and I got an email reply back from Robert Hoskins. And here's what he said, and I'm quoting directly from the email. "Good afternoon, Mike. Thank you for your email in regards to our resolution. First and foremost, this issue I saw going nowhere and wanted to push City Council to something more concrete. Therefore, I worked with a local group and their program, which we got the date 2025 from. We will now have something in writing that shows our commitment to this endeavor. As we consider this resolution, and I believe it will pass, our dialogue with the director indicates that we will certainly do better than the year 2025. In fact, my opinion has it as maybe a 25-month program." Well, that was about a year and a half ago, and so far, nothing really has changed in Baytown. And the way I interpret that is they had a city council member who was actively working to push the city council for more immediate action, but it was the advocates, promoting and pushing Best Friends program for the year 2025 that allowed them to kick that can all the way down the road to 2025, and nothing substantial has happened since. Thoughts on that? Either of you, jump right in.
Well, I think there's a couple of things that came to mind there. The first one is, when it comes to a resolution, as I said, there's a weakness to that. But secondarily, when the resolution puts something out to 2025, that's 6 years out. I don't know how long the city council terms are in that city, but it's pretty easy to pass something that you're not going to be responsible for. If elections come up between now and then once or twice, you may not even be in office. So you're definitely pushing the can down the road and taking zero responsibility for what you're setting that resolution for today.
But the press, of course, covered it though, and made it sound like they were doing this great bold thing in the city of Baytown.
Right, and it's simply not because of the term. As I said, resolutions are weak to begin with; they can't be enforced. And secondly, if I'm not going to be in office, if either I know I'm not going to run again, or there's just a shot that I'm not going to be in office, like that's an easy one. Why not vote for it? But what could go wrong? Either you succeed or you don't, and you're not around when that happens.
Right. And well, then I think it was Alan said earlier, there's a history here of, people continually kicking the can down the road, making it easier. And as you point out, most of these people in Baytown City Council won't even be on the city council anymore. So they're looking like they're doing something when in fact all they're doing is pushing the responsibility of maybe implementing that onto other people who will be in office at some future date.
I think I should point out also, this is not always elected officials. I mean, I just happened to pass legislation last year through our efforts, but in Canyon City we didn't do that. What you do is you get leadership in there that actually does it. It's faster, and it's a great way to actually succeed as well. Both can be done, but if you're going to go to the city council, it's because you have enough resistance from the opposition that you want to pass a law. If there's resistance, a resolution doesn't do you any good. You need to pass a law regardless of the timeline.
All right. Well, thanks so much for that. I believe that Best Friends could fix this by simply loudly and clearly saying, our goal is a no-kill nation by the year 2025. We have a lot of communities to get on board with that. At the local level, you can flip that switch now, and we need as many of you to do it now, today, as possible, or we won't reach that goal. Any closing thoughts? How about from you, Alan? Any thoughts as we get ready to wrap this up?
I would concur with your points and David's points. Certainly, whenever you set a long-term goal without clear deadlines and clear milestones, it's very hard for anyone to take the goal seriously. I don't want to get off topic, but in New Jersey, we had a similar situation on a state level where we had requested Best Friends to support a very strong CAPA bill that was being supported at the time and still is by Alley Cat allies. And Best Friends refused to support the bill, and basically they said, we're not going to support a bill that we don't think will pass, which I could comment on, but I think we all get the feeling that that's not right. But lo and behold, a couple months later, they came out and introduced their own non-binding statewide resolution for New Jersey to basically stop killing in their shelters with no requirements. And Best Friends did a blog on this in 2017, just prior to their Atlantic City national conference. So for us as advocates in our state, we found that very troublesome because we have a history of many shelters killing animals and breaking the law in our state, and we have a genuine solution to end that with a lot of support from respected groups, not just us crazy no-kill advocates. So I think certainly on a local and even a state level, this plan has to be much more specific, and they have to say, okay, what do we mean? Do we mean, when we mean no-kill 2025, does that mean everyone can wait 6 years and then start to do no-kill? Or does it mean, as an organization, Best Friends is going to focus our resources on certain communities in the first few years, other communities in the rest of the years, and that's what we mean. I think they have to be very clear on what they intend for no-kill 2025, what it means, and be a lot more precise so the public understands what they're doing and what they're hoping to achieve.
Any last thoughts, David?
Yeah, when we look at what Best Friends puts forth, if you go to their website and actually see what they put forth, they're saying all the right things. I can't disagree what's actually out there about how they speak about every healthy or treatable pet needs to be saved. We all agree on that. The ways to do it, they actually put them out there. They have some great publications that are actually really useful, I'm sure, to advocates and shelter management. But then they don't push them to hold them accountable to that immediately. I think they're being a little too soft on, we'll get there together and everything will work out. And I know that that's the way we want it to work. But when it doesn't, they've got to push harder. And if they push harder, they're going to reach their goal. And they'll probably reach it before 2025. The pendulum is swung. The general public is starting to better understand no-kill and what they want. This goal is definitely so much easier at the local level than it was years ago. It can happen overnight. And 2025 is not a lofty goal. I think it's actually an easy goal, and I think we will do it with all our efforts, but we need to worry about doing it in the community because every year, every day counts, right? We can't look 6 years out. We need to look at tomorrow and make sure that we're doing this now.
Well, and I would argue if you give local communities a pass so that they actually, and by the way, this is the last little point about the 2025 goal, in Baytown and other places where they say we've got this plan for 2025, it actually quiets the advocates in that community from demanding immediate change, and I think it actually then can postpone it and and actually do more damage than good. And so if Best Friends doesn't get out ahead of that messaging and say, no, at the local level, you need to work on this immediately, not wait until 2025, then I think that messaging actually could be doing more harm than good.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
So
Yeah, I agree as well.
So thank you both for joining me, and look forward to talking to you again soon. Make sure you don't miss any of the no-kill conversation. Be sure to subscribe, follow, like, and share. And thanks for watching.
All right.